since EU4 existed, it was well known that administrative ideas are the essential idea group if you want to play wide. But also everyone that did or tried doing a world conquest knows that the late game conquest is really annoying and tedious to play. And that's where I ask myself if it is even true that you need admin ideas for wide gameplay. And that is why in this video I'll show you why it can be way more resources and most importantly time efficient to exchange admin ideas for humanist ideas. Yes, you heard that right. I'm talking about a new meta idea that I would call Wide-Humanist. And just to be clear here, I'm not just talking about humanist as a quality of life idea, no one would argue about that. I'm arguing that it compares one-to-one with admin ideas, if not, that is even better than admin ideas for wide gameplay. So let's compare both ideas directly to their value for wide gameplay. I'm not talking about anything else. I'm not talking about any other idea groups in combination yet. I'm going to get to that in the end. And I'm just talking about both ideas and their value for wide gameplay. Okay, so let's get right into it and start with admin ideas. First of all, we have minus 25% advisor cost, and let's be honest, what is the maximum value that you could save with that? It's like 10 ducats per month if you have a level 5 admin advisor that is not cheaper, by which, by the way, you basically always get 50% cheaper at admin advisors from events and so on. So the maximum really realistically save that you have from this idea is 5 ducats per month. And let's be honest, 5 ducats per month can be very easily earned with just making a little bit better trade network or with getting a few more dev clicks on gold mines. So this 5 ducats per month are really not crucial at all, and I would even consider this idea as useless for wide gameplay. Next one, we have +1 possible advisors and pronoias, but there are so few occasions that you use pronoias actually in a wide gameplay that I would consider this idea as completely useless. And I would think most people wouldn't argue with that. Next, we have minus 30% promote culture cost, and even if you have 5 possible promoted cultures with some, government reforms and so on, this would save you 30 Diplo points per promotion, so 150 Diplo points in the entire game. So really nothing that you would want to take an entire idea group for, and therefore I would consider this also as useless for wide gameplay. Next, we have minus 25% stability cost, which is actually helpful if stacked with other stability cost modifiers, but the big but over here is that there are so many other sources of stability. For example, in this Jerusalem game over here, I'm Catholic, which, most people are Catholic in the beginning of the game in Europe. With the Catholic faith, I can simply take 1 stability for 70 papal influence, and I'm making 21 per year. Okay, so this is no problem at all for me to stay at +3 stability without spending a single admin points ever, right? So, and same goes if you play as a republic or theocracy, for example. You don't lose stability ever, so literally just through events you can just simply stay at +3 stability. So this is really the problem with stability cost modifiers. It is strong if you're going for that, but it is not strong enough because there are simply so many other sources of stability in game. So I would consider this not crucial enough to matter in the grand scheme of wide gameplay. Next, we have minus 0.05 monthly autonomy change, and this is simply useless because if you are an empire, you will have more than that effect, and you will have the minimum autonomy everywhere, and more minimum autonomy doesn't give you anything, right? So if you are 0, then it's done. This modifier is simply falling off, right? So I would literally consider this as a useless modifier for wide gameplay, also because it's such a small amount. Next we have minus 10% admin tech cost, and this is basically useless for wide gameplay, okay? But let's just say it saves you some admin points, but let's just keep in mind how much this is. This is 60 admin points per 10 years, so 6 admin points per year, which is honestly really not that much, but we can just keep it in mind. We save 6 admin points per year with this idea group. And then we have the 2 big modifiers that, by the way, the core creation cost one, I'm going to talk about that last. But now let's talk about the other big one, which is 20% governing capacity. This is definitely useful, but it is percentual, okay? It is a percentual modifier, which means that it gets stronger in late game once you get the big governing capacity modifiers from tech 17, tech 20, 24, 27 and so on, right? That's where the percentual modifier really shines. Just to compare that to the early game, if you are at tech 12, okay, which is already mid-game, but I'll just take it because it's a governing capacity tag, right? Then you would have a base of 1100 governing capacity. As you know, if you are the emperor, you have all 3 privileges from the estates for 100 each, and you have the technology of 12, and I think there is one more before that, right? So that would be 1100 base governing capacity that you always have, even without admin ideas. With admin ideas, you would make that be 1320 governing capacity. So only 220 governing capacity more. And let's be honest, 220 governing capacity can be easily countered with building a few courthouses, right? Which money at that point, where you have tech 12, for example, if you play wide, money shouldn't be a problem anymore at that point already, right? And if you go later at tech 17 and so on, you get town halls. You can build town halls in a half-stated province, and you will pay only the minimum of 1% governing capacity cost. Okay, by that point, money should be infinite if you play wide and if you conquer the right trade nodes and so on. So you can simply build courthouses or town halls everywhere, and you won't have governing capacity problems anyways. So you also don't need the 220 more. So if you keep that in mind, 220 is not nothing. It's something that you get, but it is not as strong as you might think it would be. Okay, but let's just keep it in mind, you gain 220 more governing capacity early game. And now let's talk about the big one, which is minus 25% core creation cost. And there's actually not that much to say, because it's a very simple, straight up, strong modifier. It gives you reduce 25% reduced time and cost for coring provinces. And this is a significant boost, obviously. It's as simple as that. But now, after I'm done with all the modifiers that admin ideas give, you probably noticed that for wide gameplay, there is literally in this entire idea group one single crucial modifier. And that's the 25% core creation cost. Okay, every other modifier can be compensated quite easily with any other game mechanics that you have without taking an idea group, right? So for example, stability and making more money and so on, right? So essentially you are taking this idea group just for the 25% CCR modifier. Okay, having this in mind, let's go on with humanist ideas, okay? And the humanist ideas have a slightly different focus, of course. And to understand why this focus matters for a wide gameplay, you would have to ask yourself, are rebels a crucial factor for wide gameplay? I think the answer that everyone would give in this case would be yes. Yes, it is a crucial factor, okay? Because if you take 150% overextension, because that's the war score that you could take, especially in the, age of Reformation with all the war score cost bonuses and so on, right? Then you gain also rebel events and so on, right? And you have an insane unrest from that overextension. You will gain every single rebel type that is available in your country. And that's not even only the newly conquered provinces, because also the other provinces will gain that unrest, okay? And if they have no recent uprising anymore, which goes away after 10 years, then they will rise up again, right? And especially the newly conquered provinces will rise up immediately, basically. So you would have to win a war, core the provinces, and while coring, you have to fight the rebels. And this means that if you fight a lot of rebels, you lose time for the army movements that could be used on the front of a new war. And also, if you fight a lot of rebels, you will lose money from reinforcing or from using mercenaries, and you lose manpower from fighting these rebels. Okay, which both can be used very well on the front of a new war. And last but not least, which is not really a big argument for efficiency, but an argument for gameplay purposes, because you might actually lose your sanity over fighting rebels, which you probably know from Slavik's Saving Your Rune campaigns. Because if you fight a lot of rebels, that is exactly what I meant in the intro, your wide conquest gameplay will get very annoying to play and very tedious to play, and you will not only lose in-game time of fighting these rebels, but also real-life time of playing this out. But anyways, that's just a side note. I'm not going to talk about that any further in this discussion. So with that rebel equals time and resources talk out of the way, let's get started with the humanist ideas and their modifiers. Straight up, first idea, -2 national unrest. Very nice, you have -2 less unrest. Nothing more to say about that. Next one is -10 years of separatism. And if you don't know how separatism works, separatism gives 0.5 unrest per year of separatism, which means that this -10 years of separatism literally equals -5 unrest on newly conquered provinces. It's as simple as that. You not only get -2 national unrest on your entire country, you also get -5 unrest on every newly conquered province you take. Next one is +2 tolerance of heretics, and later also comes +2 tolerance of heathens, which both means, as simple as that, -2 unrest in newly conquered and unconverted provinces. So just these first 3 ideas, okay, already gave you -9 unrest on newly conquered provinces that are not your religion, okay? Which basically, let's be honest, if you play wide gameplay, most of the provinces that you conquer won't be your religion, okay? Next we have +2 maximum promoted cultures. And if you are not aware about what cultures actually do, let me just find a province that is not accepted over here, for example this one over here. You can see not having this culture accepted means that this province not only gives me +2 unrest, so another unrest modifier basically, but also it gives me -33% tax and manpower modifier. Okay? Which means that this +2 max promoted cultures means you can promote 2 more cultures and not have this modifier on provinces of 2 more cultures, which, if you say you choose to accept strategically large cultures such as Turkish and Egyptian, for example, or something, right? You would, of course, do that in a normal game. Then this means that is 20 provinces more per culture. So in total, this idea of 2 more max promoted cultures gives you 40 provinces more with plus 33% tax and plus 33% manpower and minus 2 unrest. Okay, that's just straight up a crazy good modifier for your economy and your manpower. Next, we have already had the plus 2 tolerance, so I'm not going to talk about that. So it's basically already a useful idea, and the 20% religious unity is literally useless because of your high tolerance, of course, right? So it doesn't really matter. The big one is the tolerance over here again. Then the next one is plus 30% improved relations, and this is actually more than the Diplo ideas give you, okay? And this means that you will have a faster aggressive expansion reduction and therefore less coalition problems, which is a big problem on wide gameplay, right? And it gives you simply that modifier straight away in this idea group, on top of the unrest modifiers and the promoted culture modifier and so on, right? So there was nothing that helped you with coalitions in admin ideas, but there is a better modifier than in Diplo ideas in humanist ideas that helps you with coalitions. Next one is plus 1 maximum tolerance, and if you combine the tolerance of the humanist ideas for now already with the estate privilege for the Burgess estate, which gives you another plus 2 tolerance of heretics and heathens, then you will see, as in my case over here, the maximum tolerance of heretics and heathens is right now 4. Which is actually base it's 3, so it is actually worth it to have this maximum tolerance increase, because after all this gives you another minus 1 unrest in newly conquered provinces. Okay, as simple as that, and this brings you actually up to an insane minus 10 unrest in newly conquered provinces in this entire idea group. Okay. And then the finisher is minus 10% idea cost, and if you calculate that, this means that if you take that very early on, you save 250 mana per idea group, you take 1 idea group every 4 technologies, right? This means it saves you exactly the same mana as the minus 10% admin tech cost from admin ideas, which basically evens that mana cost reduction out of the formula, with the exception that the admin tech cost only saves you admin points, whereas this idea group cost saves you whatever cost of idea you choose, right? So if you take a military idea, that saves you military points, which are potentially way more valuable than admin points. But anyways, let's just even that out of the formula and just talk about the improved relations and the max promoted cultures and the insane minus 10 unrest reduction on newly conquered provinces. So every single idea of humanist ideas helps you in any way for wide gameplay, but only 1 admin idea helps you with wide gameplay. So the question that comes to mind now is, what is more worth for wide gameplay? On one side we have the admin idea with minus 25% core creation cost, and if you want to calculate this as well, plus 220 governing capacity early game, which you can compensate with money, so basically it's not worth it. But let's just calculate that on the one side, and on the other side you have humanist ideas with minus 10 unrest in newly conquered provinces, as well as plus 40 provinces with 33% more manpower and tax from the promoted culture bonus, as well as plus 30% improved relations modifier to deal with coalitions. Okay, that's the two sides, and that's what you have to compare if you think about that. And now let's get back to the rebel thing. If you get rebels, your conquest slows down, okay? And it slows down more than the 9 months of scoring time that the admin idea saves you with the 25% scoring time reduction, right? Also, if you take admin ideas, going over 100% overextension breaks your country. Okay, it simply breaks your country. You will have to wait until all of that overextension is gone, and even after that you might still have rebels loading, right? Now I'm just going to show you what happens if you take humanist ideas and do wide conquest. So in this case over here I have humanist ideas, offensive, diplomatic. I'm going to talk about the policies in a second. But now you can see if I take land from Persia over here, okay, so I take, for example, over here a huge chunk of land, 150% overextension, as well as a lot of money over here, as well as just for borders, this Karakoyunlu province over here. You can see I have 170% overextension. 170%. This overextension gives me 8 unrest, 8.5 unrest. And you can still see I have no rebels loading at all. Okay, by the way, these Iraqi rebels, they have just a little bit more separatism because Persia conquered that before. So you literally have no rebels loading with 170% of extension. Okay, so you can simply core all of that stuff. Of course, it's expensive because some of that is in a state already. So I have to go back to that. But you can see most provinces that are not in a state, they cost you more like 40, 30, 20 points to core. So the 25%, that wouldn't be a lot of admin points to save, right? And the difference is because I have no rebels loading whatsoever at 170% overextension, I can simply now go and start another war. Again, I can simply start fighting Ethiopia, for example, while I'm coring 170% overextension, and I will have not a single rebel army loading. I think you would all know from your own experience what this window would look like if you had 170% overextension with admin ideas. And the only way where core creation cost has more or less the same effect as this in this case would be if you stack the core creation cost up to a level of 75% reduction. Because then you'll have less than 10 months coring time, which means you would be able to core the provinces before the rebels can get to 100%. But even then, the rebels will load up to 90, 80%. And after you core the provinces, the unrest wouldn't be 0. Okay? The unrest would still be like 2 or 3 or 4, okay, per province, okay, even without that overextension modifier, simply from that separatism modifier. You have to imagine this one over here. I have all the modifiers stacked with unrest modifiers of -13 and so on, right? And still, this one province that had a little bit more separatism is at +3 unrest, okay? Now think about it, if that would be the maximum separatism with admin ideas, that would be 15 unrest from separatism, not 12.5. Okay, so another 2.5 more unrest, and you wouldn't have all of these negative modifiers that you can see right there. So even after you core all of that stuff up with admin ideas, which, by the way, stacking core creation costs to 75% requires more than just one idea group. But even then, you would have to fight the rebels. And then, so you would have the rebel problem either way. even if you stack it up to minus 75% CCR. But even then, stacking to minus 75 CCR takes way more effort than stacking to minus 13 unrest with humanist ideas. Okay, I had minus 13 unrest before, and of course the newly conquered provinces have a lot more reduction because of the reduced separatism, okay, compared to the normal 15 unrest from separatism. And I've talked a lot, I know, and I'm sorry for that, but this is of course a big topic basically. But I just have to talk about one more thing, which is the policies. And you've already noticed that I've took offensive and diplomatic ideas in this game. And I would argue that offensive and diplomatic are probably the most iconic non-admin idea group for wide gameplay. Okay, of course, the diplomatic ideas not only for the war score cost, but also for the improved relations modifier, as well as for the diplomats, and the offensive ideas, of course, for the slight increase in quality and quantity, as well as, of course, for the very crucial 20% siege ability modifier over here. And now, if you think about this, if you play a wide gameplay, you want to take offensive, you want to take diplo, and then you want to take humanist or admin, and if you have to decide between both of that after my video right now, and you're still not wide over the edge of taking humanist, then just have a look at the insane policies with these two idea groups, which humanist actually gives you another minus 5 years of separatism and minus 1 national unrest with offensive ideas, which is essentially simply another minus 3.5 unrest in newly conquered provinces, okay? As well as minus 1 unrest everywhere. And then it gives you another 20% improved relations with the diplomatic ideas, as well as another one max promoted culture, which, remember, is another 20 more provinces with 33% more manpower and tax modifier. And for example, this insane stacking means that even though I have a 84% reduction of improved relations from overextension, I still have plus 52% improved relations, because the humanist diplomatic ideas together literally give you 75% improved relations modifier. This is totally insane for AE reductions, and you can see, even though I conquered all of that stuff from these Sunni nations, you can see the Timurids have barely 70 over here. Nogai has 77, Transoxania has almost below 50, so this is super, super helpful to keep going with conquest and keep going without a coalition and keep going without any rebels whatsoever, as well as with way more bonuses to your manpower and tax from the promoted cultures, which is very, very underrated modifier often. So I can just recommend you to try it out and take humanist ideas instead of admin ideas, and I'll guarantee you that it will make the late game conquest and also the mid game conquest very, very much fun again, and it is more time and resources effective. So I hope you enjoyed this little talk about humanist and admin ideas for this week, and we are going to see, as always, on the next Monday.